Republican Congressman McCaul from Austin, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, is with us. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
We're here on the anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing. It appears that everything went fine with this year's event, but take us back to this past year in terms of intelligence gathering and from your assessment of it, how it went.
Well, my committee held hearings over the last year, conducted an investigation as to what happened, not as a gotcha exercise, but find out what went wrong and what can we do better to protect Americans in the future. Fortunately, this marathon, I think, has gone forward without any incident, safe, successful. But a year ago, 260 people were maimed and injured, 3 were killed, including an 8-year-old boy and an MIT police officer as well. And what we found was that look, this guy was under the radar of the FBI under investigation. Customs flags went up on him when he traveled overseas to a very extreme part of the world in Dagestan, the Chechen region, and yet nothing was done about that. And so we had some concerns about what took place during the investigation. What we could have done better, I think, to have identified radicalization taking place in the United States, but also when he traveled overseas, and the Russians warned us he would do that, to join extremists and come back. When that was flagged, but nothing was done about that, that raised serious questions about how the United States government is cooperating with state and locals, or not, in this case, with Boston police. And then what do you do with that information? He was on 4 different watch lists, and yet nothing was done. I think had they taken a second look at him when he came back from this extreme area, part of the world, they'd taken a second look, just maybe they could have stopped it.
So maybe communication among agencies and others involved, that's still a work in progress to be able to get that done.
And what we found was that it was this long after 9/11 and not connecting dots, but also a failure to share information, not only with state and locals, but the FBI agent's supervisor said, had I known he traveled over there, as the Russians warned, that would have changed everything, in his words. And so, unfortunately, it didn't happen in this case. We made recommendations that I'm glad to see the FBI and Homeland Security are now implementing in terms of information sharing that I think will better protect Americans.
Back here in Texas, of course, earlier this month we had this second Fort Hood shooting, and I know that you started to talk about maybe some of the procedures that are in place, and of course we don't know a motive officially yet as to why this took place, but mental health became an issue, and you pointed out that there is no mental health evaluation for those who are enlisting. Do you see a change based on maybe what we learned from this shooting as to what the procedures ought to be?
Well, one thing I was surprised to hear, and I think most Americans, is that we give a rigorous physical screening, but not a mental health screening, and it seems to me that makes sense. And I have co-sponsored a bill with several other members of Congress to have initial mental health screening performed when people enlist in the military, for 2 reasons. One, that can screen out people that have prior illnesses, prior suicide attempts from entering the military, but also create a baseline so when they do come back from theater of war, you can compare that to where they were before they left and before they went to war. I think that would have been very helpful with all these veterans returning, as they did in Iraq and now in Afghanistan, to basically compare where they are in a mental health position, because this is an issue that we need to deal with, and we owe it to our veterans, many of whom are suffering from PTSD, to take care of them.
You also mentioned in the immediate aftermath of this shooting that you felt perhaps it would be a good idea to allow soldiers to be able to carry weapons on post. Do you still feel that way?
Well, I think we should be having a discussion about it. I think the real answer would be putting more military police on the bases, particularly Fort Hood, that we know is a target, has been in the past. But if we don't have the funds to do that, we're in tough budgetary times, and President's budget goes back to World War II levels, then why not have a force multiplier where you have senior military leadership, give them the ability to carry weapons. It seems to me if we can trust them overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq, that when they come home, particularly the senior military leadership, to carry, that could better protect a base where, unfortunately, we've seen too many tragic episodes lately.
Something that's just occurred here is a drone strike dealing with al-Qaeda, and have you been briefed on this particular drone strike, and what could you share with us as far as the significance of it?
Well, I can only comment on the reporting, and that is that approximately 30 extreme militants have been killed by drone strikes over there. Why is this part of the world even relevant to people in Austin? The al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula are probably the most lethal and external threat to the homeland, to the United States. They're the ones developing the bombs to put on airplanes that can go undetected. The leader of AQAP is the number 2 in the line of command under Zawahiri in al-Qaeda, and they have the top bomb maker in the world for the jihadists. So as we look at who they're taking out, that if we can take that threat out over in Yemen, that helps prevent that threat from coming to either Western Europe or most significantly to the United States. If we're able to kill the bomb maker, which we don't know right now, that would be hugely significant to eliminate that expertise and threat that I see and get briefed on quite frequently, that threat that I see to the homeland.
I think we can squeeze in one more topic with you, and that regarding maybe the administration's approach to Russia, dealing with Ukraine, and maybe the association of a bill that you've introduced that could go hand in hand with this situation. Right?
Well, you know, I had a unique experience to travel to Russia to look at security for the Olympics. And I must tell you, it's a police state. The nationalistic pride, resurgence of that. You're seeing a sort of eagerness to return to the glory days of the empire. So I think that what Mr. Putin is trying to do is expand the lines into more of the Baltic areas, into Ukraine, to take back areas where he has Russian-speaking people. And this is not by happenstance. This is by a very clever design on his part. And so far, he's winning. I think that weakness invites aggression. And I do think that Mr. Putin knows that he can advance without being stopped. And I think until he knows that someone will stand up to him, he's going to take advantage of that situation, which is what I think he's doing today. With respect to the bill, one of the strangleholds that Russia and Mr. Putin has on Ukraine and the Baltic states is their reliance on energy from Russia. And that's the way he controls them and can strangle them. That's what he's done with Ukraine. We in the Congress believe we should be exporting more LNG, liquefied natural gas, and crude oil to the Ukraine region to help them against Russia. So I introduced a bill that got referred to Foreign Affairs, on which I serve, to advance that piece of legislation that I think not only will help Texans as we produce more energy in the Eagle Ford Shale, but also exporting that to an area of the world that could be more dependent on us rather than the Russians. And I think at the end of the day, it creates a better foreign policy and a national security policy for the United States.
Okay. Unfortunately, out of time, but Congressman McCaul, as always, we appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, you bet.
Appreciate it.
And